Hi guys, welcome back to the next part of the video series on the VOIP panel system. Today I'm going to go through statistics and checking of call reports and problem solve issues. So let's start off with call statistics. To find calls in your call history under statistics, you open up the calls menu. Active calls will show you calls that are happening right now on the system. Archive calls is anything that's been archived. After a year, we archive all calls. Country stats, any calls that are for a specific country or shows you breakdown per country. Pretty useful if you've got international callers. And you can also search this based on specific users. Graphs, that's just some normal statistics. Answered versus not answered versus busy, outgoing versus incoming. So here we can see we've had, in this time period, we've had 3 outgoing calls, 1 incoming call, and here's the answer versus no answer statistics. 2 were answered, 1 was a fail, that's in the outgoing, incoming one was answered. Last calls is where you'll spend most of your time in problem solving and looking up issues. So if we take a look at this, I'm going to look at last calls for the last hour because I've made some test calls here. If we go last hour and search, you will see oldest is at the bottom, latest is at the top. So the first 2 test calls I made were to cell phone number, to a non-geographic number. That was an incoming call, a non-geographic number. We can see it's an incoming because it hit a DID on the right-hand side, and it was coming from an outside source, being a cell phone number. So the cell phone number called that number, and that was mapped across to this user, Bob Murphy. And there was 0 cost because we don't bill for incoming calls. The outgoing call lasted 7 seconds here. Just before it, it was answered and it was normally cleared. And it was, your cost was 18 cents. You billed it to the client at 23.4 cents per minute. He only spent 7 seconds, so his billing was only 0.0273. If we have a look though, there's a failed call, the 3rd call I made, second on the list at 8:50. This call failed. It was a sample to show you what happens in case you're going to make, to show you that if there's an issue, what would show up. So this call failed. If we hover over it, you'll actually get the reason for the failure. So in this case, I broke the back end to this number so that you would see a failure. And what I did was I increased the back end's cost price. So it would have been a loss call. It doesn't show as a loss on your side. The provider rate is still 18 cents, but on the back end, it would have been a loss overall for the system. So it didn't allow that call. That we then fixed again, and it's back to normal. Phoning the same number, lasted 2 seconds, answered, cost was 18 cents per minute, billed out to the customer 23.4 cents per minute, and it only lasted 2 seconds, so it was billed at 0.0078. Providers would show you a breakdown of calls to the different providers. The providers are all us. We have multiple South Africa routes, so that's why you see 2, and we have a main international. The South Africa routes also do internationals as well. It's part of the least cost routing algorithm. If we look at the summary on the system, and we do a search for the day, in this case it's the last hour, gives you a quick summary. Bob had 3 billable calls, billing seconds were 9 cents, and was billed at 3.5 cents. Profit on your calls, says statistics, so it would show you a breakdown of profit for the period that you're searching for. If we had to do, there is only these test calls because I cleared the system before starting the demo. But the system has made 3 calls, answered 2 error calls. There was 1, and then average profit was that. Profit without tax was that. So overall, you've made a profit percentage of 23%. Hang-up cause is just a breakdown on the hang-up reasons. So in this case, normal clearing is what you want to see, but there was that error call, and that shows. If you want to go zoom into that call, you can click the icon on the right-hand side, and that will zoom you into a search just for that reason, and you can go then search, and that will show you just that call that failed. If you're looking in last calls, you can clear the search. I advise always clearing the search because it remembers your last search. In this case, the last search was that reason. If we just hit search, we're only going to see that call. Where if we had to clear the search, change it back to the last hour, and then search, it would show us the calls. Just want to show you what happens with active calls. So in this case, I have a test extension up. It was on Bob Murphy. If we go to active calls here, active calls will refresh by default 5 seconds. So I'm going to make a phone call to the office number. And there you see the call shows up in active calls. Just moving that out. And you as the reseller are able to spy on that call to verify. So as I say, you can spy on that call that's active, and you can verify if it is a real call, not a radio station in the background indicating a fraud destination. The other nice function, we did touch on it, is the search function. Search function allows you to search for prefixes. So if you want to look for a country, we know prefix 44 is United Kingdom. It'll show you it's United Kingdom. Country, if you want to go the other way around, if we have a look, for example, France, press enter. It'll tell you France is 33, or you can type in the full number. Remember, the number needs to be typed in an international format or enum format, which is country code first, followed by, in our case, the 7 digits. So if we want to look for a number in Cape Town, this is a number in Somerset West, that number would show up. So your cost price, because we put in the provider cost prices, was 19 cents. You're selling it on 2 different rate sheets, a default user rate sheet and a demo end user. Oops, pressed that again. Straight to the rate. You can see 22.8 cents versus 24.7 cents per minute. Remember, all billing is billed in a per second billing for what is actually consumed. Let's just get rid of our dialer here. If you want to go back to the main page, which is the start page, it's under the personal menu start page. There is some quick stats that come up here, and this shows you the calls for this month. So you can very quickly get an overview. 4 calls, 32 seconds. Revenue was that, profit was that, margin was 23%. Today's 23%. Finances, everything was postpaid, and you see it's depleted balance. We can have a look on the user, what happened. So if we open up the user, Bob Murphy, if we go to, let's go into the statement of account, and we search for, let's do the whole of the month, there will be any difference. Processing, There's no invoice generated yet, so he hasn't been billed yet for those calls. We can go though to his calls history, which is the little telephone icon, and it will show you. By default, the search, remember, went back, and you see the username in the search has changed to Bob Murphy. So if we go search, it will show you all of his current calls. If you wanted to bill this out, you would do it under billing. If you would like to invoice the customer earlier than the normal invoicing date, which happens on the first of the month, you could go to billing, invoices, and you could generate an invoice by clicking on the generate invoices option. Put in the period, so it will always be the current month up until the day, and it will, you want to generate the postpaid invoices or for a specific user. So in this case, we're going to say for Bob. Sorry, let's actually do it for first name demo Bob. We can say generate. Click OK. It will generate. It's giving us an error here, and the reason for that error is all the calls for this client were today. Its period is the 1st up until the 21st. In other words, it doesn't include the 21st, which is today. So if we had to do this tomorrow, he would get an invoice generated, and then it would show up in the invoices list, and then you could see him under users statement of account. You'd see his invoice, and then you can mark it as paid if he has paid it. But we'll do billing, invoicing, and payments in a separate video. Thank you for your time.